Hi, I'm Shibbon Winelle, and I'm here with Mr. Brandon Vega. We're here at Roots Bookstore and what is it's
Marketplace.
and Marketplace.
Mhm.
I'm glad that I got an opportunity to be in this space because it's very, what's what I'm looking for?
Homey. It's
Very homey.
It's a lot of different things.
It's creative.
Yes.
Mm.
Community oriented.
Yes, very much so.
There's love in here.
A lot of love in here. It's always love where there's books, for sure, for sure. So you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yeah, absolutely. First and foremost, thank you for, having me on with you. And as you stated, my name is Brandon Vega. I'm a former Division I athlete, played college basketball, grew up, playing sports like mostly everybody else in Miami. And now today I'm an educator and an author.
Awesome, awesome. You want to talk about your latest book?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah.
So the latest book is called P.S. I Value You, by myself and my brother Philip Agnew. This book was just to highlight, young Black and brown boys in our communities. Oftentimes, the only time, we have value placed on us is if, we are athletes or if we are, doing things that are deemed, popular. So we just kind of wanted to, put emphasis on, again, Black and brown boys and letting them know that they're important, they are loved, and they are valued.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So I'm just going to give a little bit about myself. I know people on my platform, they know who I am, but hopefully this spreads. But I'm Shibbon Winelle. I was raised in South Florida, but I'm currently out of Atlanta. My background is in marketing and branding, but I'm currently a mental health coach and fitness trainer, stretch and massage therapist. So everything health and wellness. I'm also the mother of Bryce Gowdy. A lot of people from the South Florida area know who he is because he was also a star athlete who unfortunately took his life by suicide before he was supposed to go to Georgia Tech as their 4-star wide receiver. And so I decided to share his story in more detail, and I reached out to Roots Bookstore because the Agnews are like family to me, especially Danny, who we have looking down on us here. I know that just being in the atmosphere with books is so relatable to Bryce and who he was and his story, because he wasn't just an athlete. He was intellectual, he was creative, he was so many different things that I think the world didn't get a chance to really witness because the athleticism was prioritized. So yeah, thank you so much for joining me today. Yeah, come on in.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No, come on in. We're going to edit you right on out.
Okay, sorry,
Thank
bro.
you. Yeah. No, you're fine. So yeah, we're just going to get right into it. So yeah, so my son, Bryce, he was also an athlete. And I think it's very important to have these conversations, especially coming out of South Florida. You said it, just like majority of the young Black males coming out of South Florida, they play some kind of sport.
Yeah, absolutely. For myself, it started at like 7 years old. I was going to football practice, and just to hear about your son and to hear about, the caliber player he was, it's tough to know that, he's no longer here with us. So, I know as a mom, I don't know what exactly it entails when you lose a child, but I know it takes a lot of strength to continue to move forward and try to get through days and stuff like that. So I just wanted to definitely say thank you for your strength and your courage.
Thank you.
But as far as the South Florida scene and sports and stuff like that, I've had the opportunity to witness a lot of talented people, play with a lot of talented people. And, it's really something to be said about South Florida talent because, there are so many young guys that can make it, from this place if, they have the right opportunities and if they have the right guidance.
Right.
So, I think that, again, like you said, conversations like this about, shaped around mental health, shaped around, plan Bs, and thinking about life after sports is very, very cool because, we see a lot of young people, play sports their whole life, but never really fully have an identity outside of that. to, you know, understand what it is that they want to do, or, you know, maybe trying to do in the future. So, yeah, I want to ask you, when did it start for Bryce? When did he start playing?
He started at 9. Funny, because I was going to ask you what made you get into it at 7, and you were in football first, and then ended up in basketball. Mm-hmm. So yeah, Bryce started at 9. It just so happened we moved back to South Florida from Houston, mm-hmm. and I was going through a divorce, and I needed more than just school and the Boys and Girls Club. Mm-hmm. And we were at the park, Westside Park, one day, and they looked at my boys and was like, "Man, how old are they? They're some big kids." And once they found out their age, mm-hmm. for their size, it was like, "Yeah, we'll take care of all the fees, everything." Like, I never had to pay for football. So yeah, it was just a blessing. It was able to not only have my children in an environment where they're safe, mm-hmm. for the most part, right. but also they're around other men, right? So absolutely. They're getting that discipline, they're getting that structure, they're getting that masculine bonding, which I can't really provide to them as a mom. Mm-hmm. And so for me, it was just, this is great for just them overall. And then, of course, by the time they finish between school, Boys and Girls Club, football practice, they come home, it's dinner, homework, go to sleep. It made my life so much easier. Right. Mm-hmm.
Right. So as he started playing, were you out there for his practices? Were you present, or?
Initially, yes. Mm-hmm. So for the first year, my ex-husband was still around. Mm-hmm. So we were at every practice, every game. But once things kind of hit the fan in my relationship, and we were actually separated, like my children were removed from my custody due to domestic violence, and the courts felt like I did not protect my children from my then husband. Mm-hmm. And so during those 13 months where I had to prove to the court that I would, keep separation with my ex-husband and make sure my children were safe, I didn't make that many. I only made 2 games. Mm-hmm. I didn't go to any practices. I only made 2 games. And that definitely affected Bryce.
Mm-hmm. Was this in the beginning, like when he first started playing?
This was his second year.
His second year playing? Mm-hmm. So how, do you think he recognized your absence? And like you said, that had an impact. Like, what kind of impact do you think it had?
Absolutely. So one, it made, I think that's when his abandonment issues were officially triggered. Mm-hmm. And I say officially because I feel like there was a point in time in his life when he was younger, like around 2, where I was separated from him for about 2.5 months. And I feel like that was the first instance of recognizing anxiety, because he started sucking his thumb. Mm-hmm. He hadn't sucked his thumb since birth. Mm-hmm. But as soon as I wasn't there, he started sucking his thumb. So this time now, he's 10. It's his second year in football. His first year, he was scrubbing, right? And I think for him, it was like, I need to excel in football so that my mom has something to look forward to, mm-hmm. so that I can also take care of her one day. Right. That mentality was also being developed in his mind from that age too. Mm-hmm. I think it made him go harder, but Bryce is a different child in the sense that when he first started playing football, he went to the library and would check out books on the history of football, mm-hmm. or the mechanics behind the sport, mm-hmm. and would actually read and study.
Like an actual student of the game, literally.
Yeah. Literally. And I remember after returning, coming back into my children's life and going back into being at all the practices and all the games again, I had other parents. I remember Bobby Henry pulled me aside and was like, Bryce is different. Mm-hmm. And I was like, what do you mean by that? And he was like, you notice how all the other kids are out here running around, they playing. He was like, they talking about SpongeBob and mm-hmm. all this other foolishness. He was like, but look at your child. Your child is sitting there and he's just focused. Mm-hmm. He's literally preparing himself to practice right now. And that was a wake-up call for me. Because I always knew who he was, but I didn't recognize who he was as an athlete compared to other athletes.
Mm-hmm. Maybe because you weren't looking at those other guys like that. I mean, I'm sure you already knew that he was special in his own right, and mm-hmm. he was moving differently, but to compare him to other, children or other athletes per se, we probably not, was not paying attention to it like that. So like now after that, it said to you about him being different. What other things are you seeing from him in terms of like his work ethic and the extra time that he putting in? Like what are some of the things off the field that he started to show you that made you start seeing that, hey, maybe he could be great?
So it's funny how our lives are so intertwined and how much our children influence us and not just we influence our children. So during that separation time with my ex-husband, I also lost a lot of weight. I went from like 290 pounds to 140 pounds. And so I remember Bryce coming to me. He was like, Mommy, he was like, I had a dream that you were big and you were really mean and you were mean, Mommy. And then he was like, then you lost all the weight and you were fun, Mommy. But that was the reality of our life. And so I recognized that Bryce started to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning to make sure that I would be up to get to the gym at 5. And then sometimes he would even come with me. Majority of the times he didn't though. It was more so, let me get her up.
To make sure she goes, yeah.
And then he started competing with me like, oh, Mommy, when I get to practice today, I'm gonna do this many push-ups, or I'm gonna run this many laps. I bet you can't beat me. And so it became a competition, and I noticed that's how he was straight across the board with everyone. It was like iron sharpens iron.
Right, absolutely.
Right, so if I make you compete with me, you're gonna make me better, and I'm gonna make you better.
Correct.
And we'll hold each other accountable.
Correct.
And so that kicked in very early.
Okay, about what age is this when you seeing
this? This is 10 when I first came back home.
So his second year?
No, third. This is coming into the 3rd year.
Okay, now you're starting to see him have a little bit more competitive fire about himself and wanting to
but
compete
also teamwork.
Right.
Another thing I noticed was he was willing to play any position.
What was his first position?
His first position was, I think, defensive end. And then that second year, he moved over to offense, and he was like playing a little bit of quarterback, a little bit of wide receiver, a little bit of running back here and there. And then they kept him all over the ball, but he kind of settled into wide receiver, safety, and what was the third one? Rasai, you remember the third one? The third position? It was wide receiver, safety, and another position that he was settling into before he got into high school. And so tight end, right? And so he was always all over the field, both sides of the ball.
He had to be on the field. He had to be on the field. They was going to make a way for him to be on the field.
And he always played up.
Yeah, right, because of his size.
Because of his size.
Yeah.
Right.
Was he still one of the like bigger kids, even though he
was still one of the bigger kids.
Did he ever get? Did you guys ever experience those? Hey, where's his birth certificate?
We not only that, but there were times where he was still overweight, even though he was playing up.
Yeah. Okay.
So we had to make him sweat and wear the garbage bag.
Yeah.
And
Did he understand that process, or did he?
Absolutely.
Understand that he's much bigger than
absolutely
kids his age.
And he looked forward to being placed up 1 or 2 teams so that it would be more challenging for him.
Yeah. Wow. So tell me a little bit about like where your children get their size from. I mean, I see that you pretty tall woman. But...
So Bryce, I'm 5'11". Some might say I'm 6 feet, but last I checked, I'm 5'11". Bryce's father is only 5'9". He has like a couple uncles on that side that are maybe about 6 feet, 6'1". But I think Bryce gets his height from me because my brothers are 6'2", 6'3". I have cousins that are 6'6", 6'7", uncles that are 6'6", 6'7". And so most of the aunts are above 5'7" in the family. So I think he definitely gets the height from my side.
So as far as his size is concerned, did you sometimes when children are super big for their age and stuff like that, you could tell their youth by maybe their immaturity and the way they behave and stuff like that. How was he? How did he handle being bigger again than his classmates and stuff like that? Did he conduct himself as if he was older, or did he act?
Yes and no. So Bryce was always seen as mature for his age, but he genuinely embraced his inner child.
Right.
He is a goofball. I say that he is a goofball, He doesn't know how to sit still. He was diagnosed with ADHD, but he learned how to channel it in ways where it was a benefit for him. So if he had to stand up and if he was fidgeting in class, he would fidget in class, but still participate in the discussion, still participate in the conversation. Now, was he aware of his size? Absolutely. And that was probably one of the things that he bragged about the most. Now, I know a lot of people will say that Bryce was a very humble, like you'll hear that a lot. Bryce was so humble, Bryce was so humble. But for those who know him personally, he was very cocky.
Yeah.
And so when it came to his size, he recognized that he was a lot larger than his peers. He also recognized that he was more mature than his peers. And I want to say coming into middle school, he already recognized that he was like the mentor or like big brother.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. And then also like the protection, the one who will protect everybody because of his size, and I'm sure his strength was there as well. So what's going on for you guys as he enters middle school and after he's had a couple years of football under his belt? Like where are you guys at in life at this point?
So by middle school, we're all living at home with my parents. So when I got separated from my children went to stay with my parents, and then a year and change later, I came to stay with my parents. So we're in a comfortable place. I'm working. My health is a lot better. At that time, I want to say Bryce started recognizing human behavior a lot, like very quickly, very easily. So my children grew up in the suburbs. In Deerfield, they called the community that I grew up in Crackertown. And so he went to Deerfield Beach Elementary School, which is a predominantly white school. And then he was also in gifted program, which, put him in a very diverse class, but also a class where most of the students were significantly above the poverty line.
Yeah, correct.
And so coming out of that environment from elementary school into middle school, Bryce was able to by the difference between a lot of his athlete peers compared to his IB peers. Because in middle school, he went to international baccalaureate.
Got you.
And so my second son, who's only 11 months and three weeks younger than Bryce, let's say he's in the 6th grade, Bryce is in the 7th grade. I remember Bryce coming home and explaining to me that what's in Braden's textbooks and what Braden is learning in school is actually inaccurate compared to what he's learning in international baccalaureate and in his textbooks. And so he was able to recognize that there's a real miseducation within our school system.
Right.
And then also he recognized the difference between the community that he was being raised in
comparison to where his brother was going to school at.
Well, not even just where they were playing football.
Where they was playing football. Okay, got you.
Right.
Okay, so how do you think, like, when he made or started to make that connection, was he asking those questions about why this, why that, or was he able to, kind of start seeing and understanding on his own by just seeing? Because for myself, it was kind of the same for me. That's how, with my first book, Ghetto Conscious, just being aware of your environment and your surroundings. I noticed when I started playing traveling basketball around the age of about 11 and 12, all the traveling teams was more in Broward. So my dad was, driving me 40, 45 minutes to Coral Springs. And when we go into these gyms and when we around these, different people who look just like me, but they talking different, they speaking more proper, the community looks nicer. Everything just seems like it's much better. For Bryce, when he started to see these things, like, did this kind of like change his view on life or how he felt about these particular things?
So my family is very big about getting an education at home. So he had an education prior to him voicing his opinions on these different dynamics. And so I want to say it was more so just him doing his own research and just voicing his opinions. It wasn't so much any questions. I think the question phase was more between like 4 and 9. All right, put it this way. 5th grade, Bryce is like 10, going to be 11 years old. And he comes home from school and he was like, "Mommy, can you help me understand transcendence? I'm laying in bed like, what? Like, I know what it means,
Right.
but where is this coming from?
Yeah.
And he I guess he can see that I was a little stumped. So he goes on to say, I've already been practicing lucid dreaming, but now I want to practice transcendence. So of course, so now I'm the one that ends up asking questions. I'm like, you know, where are you hearing this from? And you know, he has a friend in school who practices Hinduism, and they're having these conversations about transcendence and lucid dreamings and afterlife and all these things. And so I do start educating him to the extent that I could educate him. So I can, I can tell you what lucid dreaming is. I can tell you what transcendence is. I can even give you insight into, you know, the need to be careful when you start practicing transcending. All right. And so, but then I went to my mom, and my mom, you know, had the same conversation with him. So he's raised in that type of environment. So once he starts recognizing the polarities in middle school, it's more so, I need to set an example. He also recognized he wasn't accepted. Like, he wasn't considered Black enough because he didn't speak
a certain type of way.
Right. Or he didn't dress like his family didn't.
How did he handle that, or what did he think about that?
True story. I did not let my children have smartphones until they were going into high school. So Bryce in middle school had a flip phone. When you got to press the button 3-4 times to get to that one that letter. Bryce literally came home from school and was like, "Mommy, they was clowning me about my phone for the first 2 weeks, but now I got everybody wanting to get a flip phone." I'm like, "How you do that?" And he was like, "Whenever the phone rings or it chirps when I get a message, I just whip it out like that." And he made it so cool
that people wanted to do it too. So trendy, trendsetter.
So that's how he made him not having a smartphone be acceptable amongst him and his friends. And that's something that they talk about to this day, is Bryce flipping out the flip phone and being extremely dramatic with it.
Yeah, so he was somewhat of a character, like you said, goofball. Like, he understood how to get things to work in his favor.
Absolutely. He called himself the finesse king.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, I don't want to move too far into like him getting ready to go to college, but I want to know, like, as he enters high school now, you know, what's going on in terms of is he attending camps? Is he getting recruited? You know, were there any other options to play football at any other high school? And why you know, did you guys choose Deerfield Beach when he could have probably went to the St. Thomas Aquinas or American Heritage or, you know, any other program that, like,
Monarch?
that does really well? Why did you choose?
I didn't choose Deerfield. I went to Dillard High. I just want to let everybody know I'm a Panther for life. Bryce's father played for Deerfield Beach High School. Bryce's father played for his Little League. And I didn't really, so Bryce did not meet his father until his 4th birthday. And then from 4 till about, you know, 9, 10, 11 years old, very few engagement here and there. And so I want to say that second year, when I wasn't on the Little League field, is when the community started telling Bryce who his dad was. I didn't really know much about his dad when it came to his football career, We went to middle school together. I think he was like in the 8th grade, I was in the 6th grade. And then he went to Deerfield, I went to Dillard. So there wasn't any, like, me knowing him until we met as adults. And then by the time we met as adults, he was already putting his football career behind him. Bryce, you know, he would hear stuff like, "Your dad was a GOAT. Your dad was the greatest, but he had a lot of hoes. So don't you know, get distracted like your dad." And so Little League, that I need to be better than my father,
was already in him.
And following his father's footsteps. So from when he went to middle school, he's still in Little League. 2012, I wanted to move to Atlanta, and I got a job and everything up there, and he begged me to stay in Florida because, well, Florida produces the most athletes, but also I want to go to the exact school that my father went to and and just pretty much blow out all his records,
Mm-hmm.
academically too.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is the conversations we're already having before he gets to high school.
Mm-hmm.
Once he got to high school, it was this is the family legacy that I need to set moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
Coming into high school, though, I could see the business of football start to take over, because he was already going to camps from 5th grade.
Right.
Right. Like, what's his name? Jason, out of the Miami Dolphins. He had his
Jason
camp.
Taylor.
So he was already going to those camps.
Yeah.
In all through middle school. Remember, he's big for his age.
Right.
So even though he's 12, he's playing 13, 14 U.
Right.
And so by the time he got to high school, his coach, he wanted to play quarterback. And his coach told him that he could not play quarterback because he didn't want him being pulled off of the field just because he got a C. And my thing was, Bryce is a straight A student in international baccalaureate. Mm-hmm. So if he drops to a C, it's because he wanted to. Because school comes very easy for him. Mm-hmm. And I feel like as a coach, you should be like, yes, he could play quarterback and he needs to make sure he maintains these grades, because that's a healthy standard.
No, absolutely. And why do you think a coach would be against, a student athlete being pulled off the field for having a C, if that is the standard that the family sets in the household?
I think from that moment forward, the coach proved to us and to many others that winning was more important than an athlete's academics, career, and success.
And why do you think winning would come before grades and academics?
Money.
But at the high school level, you don't really even make any money. So why do you think that would? I mean, but it's not like we're in Texas where football coaches are actually getting salaries. Like, I know in South Florida, the ability to brag and say, hey, I won and I beat the cloud and all of that stuff. Yeah, that's one thing. But again, like, in terms of the mentality, football coaches, because again, my high school career was basketball. I stopped playing football when I was in 8th grade. So I'm not familiar with, the football coaching culture. I just know what I see. I don't necessarily agree with everything, but I also know that, I don't know much about it to have a take. But as far as coaches are concerned, again, we see it a lot of times where, hey, we just need you to be eligible. You don't have to necessarily make A's and B's. We just want you to be eligible. Why do you think, again, the standard that you are able to set in your household cannot be upheld by coaches in the community?
So yes, the clout, right? Deerfield is a school that produces
top talent.
Right. So making sure that legacy continues from coach to coach is important. But money. I meant what I said the first time when I said money. And when I say that, is that a lot of these coaches get kickbacks for these athletes.
Under the table type.
A lot of these coaches are betting on their own athletes and teams. A lot of these coaches, like, remember our Little League team, we had to witness a lot of our Little League coaches get arrested by the FBI on the side of the curb for gambling. You remember that big story coming out of Broward?
No, I don't remember.
Yeah, that was our coaches from Little League.
Yeah, I got to go back in the archive.
And from what I understand, a few politicians were involved. And so my son witnessed that from Little League. We're going to say a lot of coaches, there's money involved behind the scenes.
And you think that this money has made it where, again, we don't necessarily care about the whole student athlete, we just care about the athlete?
I think it becomes a business. It is a business. I remember, so Bryce received his first offer coming into his sophomore year. And interestingly enough, his first offer was from his father's alma mater, Syracuse. And so I remember he was so excited. The irony was there. We definitely talked about that as well. But by the time he got his third offer, asking him what's wrong, I'm like, you're not. It's not even that you're not excited. You look overwhelmed. Like, you look like it's just like you're just blah.
Right.
And his exact statement was, "It's just a business."
Yeah. And
this is in the beginning of his sophomore year. He goes on to get over 40 more offers after that.
Right. So do you think, like, as he's starting to see that this is becoming more and more like a business, the love starts to to leave, and it's no longer about, you know, the fun and the love. It's like literally a job that I have to clock into, and then I also have to, you know, do overtime just to, you know, shine in the way that I wanna shine and to be great and to be able to receive 40 plus offers. Because one can say, you know, the student athletes who are being most sought after are the ones who are putting in the most work. When we look at Malachi Tony, who plays at, you know, the University of Miami, and how he mentioned, you know, his work ethic and watching his mother get up and all of that stuff, inspiring him to clock in early and to, you know, be the first man in and the last one to leave. You know, it is a job. But again, how do you think we can get these young student athletes to focus on their academics and put that same work in with their academics, you know, as they do athletically?
I think it has to start from the top, right? So we have our school board, we have our superintendent, and then we have each individual school and their administrative body, and then we have the coaches underneath that administration. And I think it starts from the top. I think South Florida on a whole needs to set a standard for our athletes. I believe that South Florida also needs to implement other tools, skills, and resources that our athletes need in order to navigate this business, because that's what it is.
Right.
And they're introduced to this business from
very early.
I want to say Little League.
Yeah.
Like everywhere we went, you know, we were being invited to camps.
Yeah.
And for free. Like I never paid for anything for any three of my sons.
Nothing ain't free in life.
Well, I paid the ultimate cost in the end, but that's how lucrative this industry is at such a young age, that they're willing to invest in a single mother's 3 children, getting all the equipment, paying all the fees, traveling everywhere without putting the financial burden on her. And that's huge. I have 3 boys that are active in football. So you're looking at a few $1,000s a year being invested into my family.
Right.
That money's not being invested for no reason.
Yeah.
And our youth need to understand that. Our school board needs to help our youth and the families understand that. And then give us the tools, skills, and resources for mental health, of course, because once you become an athlete, you're in a different category, lifestyle. Even if you're in the hood, 11 years old, you're still in a different category of lifestyle because you're getting a different type of attention, not just from your peers, but from everybody.
Right, right. And I think that it's also very difficult to deal with if you have the right people around you. You know, when you talk about, you know, these investments being made early, I had the fortune, you know, coming up through Little League, you know, in football, Stedman Bailey, who made it all the way to the NFL. Devontae Freeman, who made it all the way to the NFL. And I also played football and basketball with Brandon Knight, who made it to the NBA. So I saw those caliber athletes. I was on teams with them, and I saw, you know, how they were treated and also how they conducted themselves. And you're right, young student athletes do have to know that the only reason this investment is being made is, you know, with the hope that one day this will be paid back. You know what I'm saying? Because these same people that pour into you very early, it's a investment that they're hoping to compound on.
Absolutely.
You know, so a lot of student athletes out there, you know, understand that, you know, when you're good in your particular sport, please know that everybody doesn't love you because they love you. They love you because you're a great athlete, and they're looking to capitalize off your ability. So, you know, having the right people around you is very important. And, you know, having these conversations, asking questions about things that you don't know is very important. So it's really good that you brought that up. And I think me and your connection is also divine because, you know, a lot of different things that we've done separately intertwines with one another. You know, being an athlete coming from Carroll City, you know, I developed Eaton, which is exist above the noise, which the noise is what clouds our judgment, clouds our minds, which causes the confusion, causes the anxiety, causes the stress. And because we don't have the proper outlets to release these things, or we don't have the proper skills or tools to help ourselves, we end up crashing and burning. So as, you know, Bryce is starting to receive all of these, you know, scholarship offers and all of this stuff, you know, after his sophomore year, what is happening now with him mentally, and how is his development still going? Is he still working super hard, or is he, you know, kind of taking his foot off the gas.
No, he's working super hard. He's the first one on the field, the last one off the field. He's calling people to get extra practice in with him after practice. He's waking up 4 or 5 in the morning and walking to the beach so he can work out in the sand and build his mechanics that way. Literally, we could be in the mall shopping and Bryce is running routes while he's running routes around strangers.
Right.
And they're looking at him like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
And so he definitely went harder. But again, he's an emotionally intelligent child, empathic. I want to even say he had some psychic abilities. And he's what, I hate to use the word because I feel like it's so played out, but he's what his peers would call woke. All right. And so going through that recruitment process between 10th grade and coming into 11th grade, I felt like overwhelmed him. Hold on a second. I felt like it overwhelmed him. I felt like I remember one time I was like, man, Bryce, this is a lot of people to speak to in this recruiting process. Like, I can't keep up with everyone.
Right.
And he was like, Mommy, for every one coach that you speak to, or maybe you might speak to like a coach, a couple recruiting coaches and the head coach, and you might speak to a couple booster parents. He was like, for every one person you're speaking to at that one school, I'm speaking to like 100. He's speaking to teammates. He's speaking to other players that want to go to that school. He's speaking to booster club members. He's speaking to alumni. He's speaking to coaches, recruiting coaches.
Yeah. The community, everybody. So it could be a lot for a young person. And I think that's the thing we don't necessarily factor sometimes when we have to understand that, you know, these children are dealing with so many different things. And then at the end of the day, they still children. And some of these children, you know, like a Bryce, are going through real life things at home that, you know, with all due respect, you know, hey, I don't necessarily want to be having these football conversations or be talking about, you know, these things when I have a real situation at home.
Exactly.
And as you mentioned earlier about, you know, as he was young, he started to see like, hey, I want to give my mother something to look forward to, and I want to be able to take care of my mother. Sometimes that in itself can be stressful.
Absolutely.
You know, because we're seeing our parents who may not be in the position they want to be in, and then we take on the burden so early, you know, where we're trying to expedite our process, right? Where we hoping to be grown faster, and we're sometimes skipping certain steps because it's not for a child to be, again, worrying about adult things. When we come from the communities we come from, it's like you can't help but see it. And even if you're not living it, you're seeing it amongst your friends and their parents and stuff like that. So I do think that, you know, the South Florida community, you know, needs to do a better job at providing, you know, access for these young student athletes to, you know, talk about the things that they're dealing with. And I think if South Florida does it, you know, the whole country will follow suit.
Absolutely, because we produce the most athletes. And so we already set that trend. If we set the trend behind our athletes to genuinely care for them as a whole person,
holistically,
and not just an athlete, not only will we be producing the most athletes, I think, but we'll be producing athletes that are able to operate from a place of wholeness and not this fragmented identity that can easily crumble with just an injury, which brings me to his sophomore year when he broke his leg. He's coming into his junior year and you know, he's balling. He's probably at about 20 something offers already. Homecoming comes, he wins homecoming court, and the next game he breaks his leg. He breaks his tibia.
So he's riding his high, and then,
And that was when I noticed a significant change in Bryce. Like, for the first time ever, he was much more reserved, much more quiet. However, a lot of bad habits started popping up. So he wanted to hang out with his friends more, you know, because he can't do much.
Right.
The girls were able to infiltrate more because of that level of vulnerability, and they definitely played on that. I want to say during that time, his father was trying to re-enter his life. His uncle on his father's side had always been there, but he was a lot more, and they have this mentality that Bryce should, you know, be a young man as an athlete and live that lifestyle. I'm not going to sit here and say yes or no, but I know how I raised my sons, and I know that they have a deeper understanding when it comes to intimacy and sexual relationships. And so eventually that did affect Bryce, where he felt like he was, his exact words, using sex to communicate in the wrong ways. And so, but during that time period, the insecurities were heavy. He would say things like, maybe I should focus on playing safety instead of, or tight end instead of wide receiver, so I could preserve my body. So he was already thinking like that. Like, how long will I be able to be in the game if I keep pushing my body like this? And so about a month and a half after that injury, we ended up taking a family vacation to St. Croix for my grandmother's 92nd birthday. And I feel like that rejuvenated him, right? Because first of all, we're in the islands, but we're also among over 50 family members for over a week. And then when he came back from that, within a week, he was able to get his cast off. And then he was back on the grind, like on 1,000.
Yeah.
Because he's got to build his strength back. And then also Bryce was experiencing a lot of, not prejudice, but bias.
In what sense?
So because he was educated and he was big and tall for his age, he felt like his coaches didn't play him as much because he was going to already get shine. So his numbers, he was like going into his junior year as like a 3-star, and that pissed him off. So he used 7-on-7s to build up his stats.
Right.
And literally was traveling the country. Like wherever he wanted to go, I was like, fine, just as long as you have the grades.
Right.
And so he was in Cali, he's in Atlanta, he's here, he's there, doing these 7-on-7 tournaments in addition to keeping up with his international baccalaureate coursework, and making sure that he's not only participating in his high school team, but also a team leader.
Right. How important was it for you to address leadership and, you know, doing your best, you know, academically and athletically?
So my father raised me to understand that in this world, there's no such thing as right or wrong or good or bad. The only thing that matters is that you're great at whatever you decide to do. And he would use an example of, you know, if you decide that you want to be a doctor, make sure you're the greatest. If you decide that you want to be a murderer, make sure you're the greatest. And of course you look at him like,
right.
And he'll be like, if you're the greatest murderer there is, 9 times out of 10, the CIA or the FBI are going to come recruit you. So there's nothing right or wrong. It's just, how do you move through this world and make sure that you're great at whatever you decide to do. So I passed that on to my children as well. And for Bryce, it was not so much so being a leader, but more so mastering yourself. Like I teach my children, master yourself and lead by example. You can't be a leader to other people. You can only lead yourself. And so that was what was important to me. Like we grew up in a household where we meditated. My father used to make us sit for an hour. We couldn't fall asleep. We couldn't interact with each other as brother and sister. We couldn't do anything but just sit in silence. And my mother would scream at him, "Oh, you're not letting them be children." But as I became an adult, I realized he was just teaching us how to meditate before it was a trend. And so my children learned how to meditate from a very young age. So by the time Bryce was in high school, he was teaching his peers how to meditate. Anybody came to him that was too annoying, it was just breathe, bro.
Yeah.
Inhale through the nose. So this is his energy that he's bringing on campus in his community. And it wasn't so much, oh, be a leader, but more so, this is how you master yourself. And just by mastering yourself, you will be a leader.
So as we talk about mastering yourself and having that self-discipline, having that self-control, as we get closer now, as we're talking about going into his junior year after, you know, him getting hurt, you know, there's a lot happening. Absolutely. You know, in this time frame. And when you think about high school, it's only 4 years, and those 4 years may seem like forever, but it's really not. you know. So now when we talking about, you know, again, him having this mentality of concentrating, focusing, you know, putting myself in a space where I feel peace and I can move correctly. Now he's going into his senior year, right? And you know, this is last year of high school. You gotta, you know, do your thing. And now it's commitment time. So talk to me or share with me a little bit about this time, you know, his senior year, you know, how he had prepared for it, what type of, you know, academic year and athletic year he had, and then his commitment to Georgia Tech.
Absolutely. So the summer before his senior year, we had moved into our own space. So, you know, coming into that junior year, he's on that high, getting, you know, the offers, and then he is homecoming king, he's in his own place, and then he breaks his leg. But we're in our own place. So I think that was also very healing for him as well. However, by the end of his junior year, we were displaced. That was also during the time where he started his official visits. Literally, we had Georgia Tech official visit like the weekend of May 12th, and we had to be out by June 1st, 2 weeks later. And so that time was very stressful. Bryce was very concerned about leaving us, right, to go to college, and we're now entering into this lack of stability. We went on his first official visit to Georgia Tech. That was a really great visit. Like, you can tell that his energy was very high. However, his father was living in Atlanta at the time and made his presence known. And I remember his father coming to me after, you know, meeting with Bryce and saying, oh, he doesn't really want me to be around right now. He's got a chip on his shoulder. And I was thinking, maybe you have the chip on your shoulder and you're projecting that onto him, right? Because there were some other things that he would say, like, oh, Bryce thinks that he's all that. That you're an absentee father, and I'm allowing you to show up as you please. The least you can do is be supportive instead of coming off as competitive. And so I believe that was also a part of the dynamic that was playing a part in his life at that time. His father was like texting and contacting me daily. And I would just be like, you know, could you pay child support? You ain't got to give me any money, just pay it to child support so we can get some help. And he would like use that to kind of string me along, and Bryce would be upset with me about it. He was also texting Bryce things like, I'm gonna marry your mom before all of our birthdays. So my birthday is December 29th, his father is January 11th, and Bryce is January 29th. And it's like, you're married already, and your wife is bringing your 11th child into the world right now while you're sending these messages. So I think that was also playing a part in Bryce's psyche. Also, the way how he was being treated by his coach, he felt like his coach didn't really care for him as a person. And so coming into that senior year, I remember sending an email to the school in September to let them know, about our situation. Like, the coach just kind of dismissed the whole thing. Like, we were just on our own. And then coming into the month before the playoffs, that's when the coach came and was like, oh, you have people saying that I'm using Bryce and I'm taking advantage of him. And I didn't know that you guys were in this situation. And he put us in a hotel. It was actually an old hospital. So we're in a hospital room. And so for that month we're there, you know, we're trying our best to make things work. Bryce is losing weight significantly. Like, he was literally playing football in almost skin and bones. And also, before he went into his senior year, he suffered a major concussion 2 weeks before. And so he was forced onto the field within 24 hours. And my thing was, if he doesn't have to play for 2 weeks, why not just have him take the 2 weeks off? So by November, I feel like we were seeing the symptoms of that, like the slurred speech and like the random aggression and things like that. And so coming into the playoffs, our month in the hotel was coming like to an end. And the hotel was like, oh, just call coach to renew it for another month. We were calling coach, no answer. The hotel manager decides to call, he answers. And he's like, just have her renew it for the 9th and I'll reimburse her tomorrow, which will be like $100 for the night plus $50 deposit. Cool. I did that. The next morning, we have to leave again and we're calling no answer. The hotel's calling no answer. So the hotel's like, listen, just get in contact with him and we'll be able to work something out. No answer. So they're bringing our stuff out of the room, and then that's when the hotel manager says, look, the McDougal football school was residing in that hotel on the other side, on like another wing. Coach used the school to get us a room under the school's discount. So the coach was only paying $20 a day. That's $600 for the month. And he was like, if you can get him on the phone, if you have the $600, you can pay that yourself. You just got to get him to renew it under the school. We didn't hear from him until like a week later. We ended up having to go to a hotel on the beach and, just pay out of pocket. And so with Bryce witnessing that, it's like, do you actually care about me as a person, or did you just care about me enough so that you didn't look bad because people were saying that you were taking advantage of me?
Right.
And so Bryce was experiencing that as well. So I think it's a combination of us being displaced, the school, not following through with some of the things that we needed, in addition to his father trying to re-enter our lives and how he was going about it, the way how his coach was treating him, and then his peers. So as a star athlete, especially one who is intelligent, and he's not only getting D1 offers, he's getting interest from Ivy League schools. And so a lot of his peers recognize that even without football, he's probably still going to make it.
Yeah.
And so there's that level of, what's that word? Like separation. Envy. Well, I guess you could say envy, yeah. But it creates separation, right? And then I don't think the coaches made it any better because, like, if how Bryce explained it to me is that the team is split in half. So you had like these two athletes that were the team captains that were like from the hood. They fit the image of that South Florida athlete. And then you had Bryce and his friend who were much more calm. They didn't really wear the name brands. They were very much more on the nerdy side and proud of it. And he was like, literally the team was split right down the middle, where half the team was behind these kids and the other half was behind. And so they lacked the teamwork. But Bryce was able to recognize that started from the coaches and how the coaches treated each camp and valued each camp. And so now you have those dynamics playing a part, which is going to create jealousy and envy, and then the girls. I didn't realize that not only the girls, but the girls' mothers were also going to be plotting and scheming. And so, where's the love when everyone around you wants a piece of you based on you being an athlete, and nobody's taking the time to really care or get to know you?
So do you think, like, as you mentioned, all of these different dynamics and all of these different people need to just be attached to the product and not necessarily caring about the person?
Absolutely.
Like, now that this time has passed, like, how do you understand it now?
So interestingly enough, I have been able to establish my own relationships with a lot of my son's peers over the years. And let's just say everything he had to say about each individual, I was able to witness, or I've experienced myself. Some of these young people had no problem coming in my life and playing around. And so it just helped me recognize that our community really needs help. Like, this is not a individual thing. Yes, every person is responsible for themselves, but it's a lot of communal influence that is influencing our youth. And they're reacting to a lot of this trauma with these negative behaviors. So there's a lot of gaslighting and emotional and manipulation, and it's just a very toxic environment. I had a young lady after my son passed, before we even laid him in the ground, she said she was pregnant for him. This young lady's mom, I remember when they were like 12, she was like, we got to get them together because they're both going to be scholar athletes. But by the time they got into high school, the young lady's failing school. Bryce is going through what he's going through with girls. So we can't really predict how our children are going to turn out, especially when they get into adolescence and they start making their own decisions. But there is a dynamic where even the parent is encouraging the young person to play these games in order to get what they want out of the athlete. And so it's a community thing.
And once, because I saw a clip of like the high school coach, speaking on it. So I wanted to know, like, how was Georgia Tech or anybody from that school, like, how was the, support, once he transitioned?
So up until we laid Bryce to rest, everyone was extremely supportive. Georgia Tech, like a lot of the coaches that were interacting with my son flew in for his funeral and they were there. They did promise, like whatever we decided to do in my son's memory, that they would donate and support. That hasn't followed all the way through. However, I have to admit that I personally haven't pushed for anything either. For me, it's just very difficult for me to ask for donations or for anything when it comes to the death of my son. And so, however, there are a few very specific coaches that are like ride or die. Like I can call them to this day and they're going to be there. And of course, so that's the previous head coach, Coach Collins, also Coach Choice, who's currently at the Detroit Lions right now. So Coach Carey, he's I believe in Connecticut, teaching, coaching out there. And Coach Aaron, he was the recruiting coach for Georgia Tech, but now he's at Arizona State. And so I would say those three coaches in particular, to this day, I can call them and they're gonna, whatever they need to do in memory of Bryce, they're gonna do it.
So one of the last things I would like to say is,
I don't want to leave out, Georgia Tech did also allow me to like use their, like I did a photo shoot with their athletes for like some t-shirts and stuff we were selling in memory of Bryce. So they've been there for me, but I haven't pushed for the things that they promised.
Got you. Like as it stands now, being a mother of a student athlete who, transitioned, what are some words of advice you would want to share with moms who may be on this journey by themselves, trying to navigate, having a son or a daughter that's a high caliber student athlete?
I'm gonna look at the camera for this one. So my advice to parents, especially single moms, when it comes to raising student athletes, especially here in South Florida, because this is like a whole beast within itself. Understand that in this culture, our children are products. And it's up to you as the parent to make sure that your child understands that they're a whole being, and for us to treat them as if they're whole beings and set the standard for that when it comes to whatever school we decide to allow our children to go to, and the coaches have those conversations so that the coaches understand that this is how you expect your child to be treated. Make sure that you are involved. Make sure that you are there. Make sure that you're part of the conversations, especially going through the recruiting process, because these coaches will tell your children any and everything to get what they want, and you want to make sure that your child is not selling themselves short. And educate yourself about the business of sports and entertainment. I think it's extremely important that our parents start learning the business behind this sport early on, like from Little League. If we can even get some workshops, matter of fact, I'm creating a workshop right now to help our athletes understand how to use their NIL. One of the things Bryce mentioned to me before he passed is that, like I said, my background's in marketing and branding. And so he was like, I would not have gone as far as I did if it wasn't for the marketing and networking skills that I, instilled in him. Did that open the door for the amount of people that he was communicating with that overwhelmed him? Yes. However, he did get that far because he was great at networking. He was great at marketing himself online. And I could only imagine where he would be today
if he would have,
now that they've allowed athletes to use their NIL. Bryce was modeling. He was, matter of fact, 2 weeks before he passed away, he did a photo shoot at Art Basel for a clothing line out of LA called Legends of Creativity. And so he could not get paid for that because it would violate NCAA rules. And so, mind you, I got paid as a model in that same photo shoot, but I literally had to decline his payment just so that no rumors would spread or anything that he was doing this type of work and getting paid. Today, that money would have came in handy because we were homeless. Right? And, you know, so just that's parents, just make sure that you are walking with your child every step along the way.
Yeah. Well, it's been nice talking to you.
Thank you.
No, for real. It's been nice talking to you. I think more of these conversations are definitely needed to be had, and definitely talking about specific topics as it pertains to our student athletes here in South Florida. So thank you for,
thank you.
letting me, pleasure sitting next to you.
Thank you. No, I appreciate it.